Before you were born, a choice was made, not by chance, not by fate imposed from above, but by you. A choice echoing from the deepest layer of your soul's awareness. In that realm beyond form and beyond time, you stood in quiet lucidity and saw this life in full clarity, not as a blank slate, but as a map of lessons, synchronicities, and encounters. There in the stillness of spirit, you planned this exact moment. This truth may shake the foundations of what you've been taught to believe. It defies the idea of randomness. It whispers that your pain had purpose, your delays were divine, your longing was always a compass. There is a rhythm here beneath the chaos, and that rhythm is yours. Brian Weiss, psychiatrist turned soul guide, uncovered what many have always intuited but never dared to speak. That time is not linear, that our consciousness stretches far beyond one lifetime, and that healing occurs not only by remembering, but by remembering who we were before we forgot. His patients, under deep hypnosis, traveled into lifetimes they had never known in waking awareness. They saw patterns repeating, wounds carrying forward, and soul contracts formed with those they both loved and feared. This moment you are living right now, reading these words perhaps with a sense of familiarity you can't quite explain, was known to your soul. And more than known, it was chosen. Because your spirit understood what your mind might resist, that transformation requires forgetting and rediscovering, that growth demands immersion, that awakening isn't about escaping reality, but decoding it from within. Close your eyes for a breath and feel into this. What if your greatest challenge was part of a sacred design? What if the person who hurt you most agreed, at a soul level, to be your mirror? Painful, yes, but catalytic. What if your deepest fear is a threshold waiting to be crossed, not avoided? In the space between lives, Brian Weiss describes a timeless realm, a place of learning, review, and peace. There, surrounded by guides and soul family, you reflected on all you had been, and all you still longed to become. You saw the karmic threads you wished to untangle, the compassion you longed to embody, the courage you knew you'd have to rediscover. And so you came here. You agreed to forget, knowing that forgetting would allow authenticity to emerge from choice, not obligation. You would grow not because you were told to, but because something within you would awaken and whisper, "There's more." You would find yourself pulled by a quiet gravity toward moments like this, moments that feel like remembering. This is not fatalism. You are not a puppet of destiny. You are the author of your path. But in that place beyond the veil, you wrote your story with love as your ink and evolution as your aim. You placed markers, people, places, possibilities that would help you remember when the forgetting became too dense. Now ask yourself, why this moment? Why now? What have you been circling? What truth have you been almost ready to hold? Perhaps this chapter is not a beginning, but a return. Let it sink in. Let it ripple through the unconscious layers. And if these words stirred something within you, an ache, a recognition, a subtle warmth, trust that. You didn't arrive here by mistake. This too was written. If these words touched your soul, subscribe to the channel. The soul is not bound by linear time, nor does it perceive the events of life as separate or accidental. In the higher dimensions of consciousness, all experiences are threads in a single luminous tapestry, woven with intention, layered with meaning. Every encounter, every loss, every joy, every silence was selected not to punish or reward, but to sculpt your essence into clarity. Brian Weiss often spoke of soul groups, clusters of consciousnesses that travel together across lifetimes, playing different roles for one another. In one life, a person might be your father, in another, your rival, in yet another, your child. But beneath the shifting masks lies a soul intimately familiar with your own. You are surrounded even now by souls you once walked with in ancient temples, on distant continents, through epochs long forgotten by history, but not by your inner being. When his patients were guided into deep states of regression, they did not just remember, they felt. The echoes of other lives emerged not as fantasy but as visceral memory. The texture of a garment, the smell of a room, the emotion of a long-past betrayal or reunion. These were not hallucinations, they were awakenings. Reminders that what we call the present is only a thin layer floating atop a vast ocean of consciousness. The architecture of your soul's plan is not rigid. It breathes with you. You are not trapped by destiny. You are partnered with it. You co-create in every moment. The blueprint you designed before birth was detailed, but flexible, leaving space for your free will, for detours, for spontaneous beauty. You did not script every line of this play. You chose the stage, the key players, the central themes. But how you embody the role, how deeply, how bravely, how tenderly, that remains yours alone. Why then do we forget? Because remembering everything would prevent the unfolding. You did not come here to recite a script. You came to live it, to stumble, to rise, to feel the weight of separation, so that unity could be rediscovered not as theory, but as experience. In the forgetting, there is magic. The soul hides its truth behind veils, not to deceive you, but to offer you the gift of discovery. When you meet someone and feel an instant bond, when a place you've never seen feels like home, when a lesson repeats until you finally surrender to it, these are clues, markers, the hidden architecture revealing itself. Weiss taught that healing begins when we stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and begin asking, "What is this here to teach me?" Feel into that shift. Imagine your life as a curriculum crafted by your own higher self. Each difficulty, a course in strength. Each heartbreak, a study in self-love. Each delay, a masterclass in patience and trust. You're not a passive student. You are the sacred designer of this education. And the beauty of it is, it's never too late to remember. You can awaken at any moment. Right now, in fact, you are. The words you are reading are not just words. They are vibrations, ripples in your field, reminders echoing from that space where you chose this incarnation. A whisper from your soul saying, "Yes, keep going." The plan was never perfection. The plan was presence, it was depth, it was love rediscovered in unexpected places. So breathe into this truth. You are not lost. You are exactly where you intended to be, not because life is easy, but because your soul is brave, brave enough to forget, so it could one day remember. In the sacred stillness before incarnation, there is a meeting, a communion of souls. You and others gather, not in words but in vibration, in mutual knowing. You discuss the lessons you each seek, the roles you are willing to play. Some agree to love you. Others, with immense courage, agree to challenge you. These are the contracts of the heart, silent, soul-deep promises that transcend the visible world. Weiss described these pre-birth agreements as acts of profound spiritual collaboration. They are not written in punishment, but in trust. Imagine for a moment that the person who broke your heart in this life was a soul who loved you so much that they agreed to be the catalyst of your awakening. Imagine that your greatest loss was designed not to diminish you, but to open a space within you that only the infinite could fill. These ideas are not comfortable, but they are liberating. They invite us to see beyond the surface, to look at our relationships not merely as random interactions, but as orchestrated moments of sacred exchange. Every soul that touches yours has a purpose, even if that purpose is veiled in pain. This is not about blame or spiritual bypassing. It is about reclaiming authorship of your experience. When you see yourself as a soul in evolution, every event becomes meaningful. Even betrayal can be seen not as cruelty, but as a lesson in boundaries, in truth, in self-worth. Even abandonment becomes a doorway to learning how to stand fully in your own presence. Weiss often witnessed patients reconnecting with souls they had loved in other lifetimes. The recognition was instant. Tears flowed, not from grief, but from remembrance. "It's you," they would whisper as if waking from a long dream. Time dissolved, lifetimes folded into one another. And the soul spoke without words, "I never left you." You've likely felt this yourself. A person enters your life and you feel as though you've known them forever. Or you meet a stranger and within minutes feel a depth of connection that logic cannot explain. These are echoes of soul contracts rising to the surface, markers placed in your life plan to remind you that nothing real is ever lost. That love once formed at the soul level transcends lifetimes, but these contracts are not always easy. Some require us to endure difficulty, to face rejection, to release what we once clung to. And yet, the soul does not seek comfort, it seeks expansion. The roles may be hard, but they are always rooted in love. A soul agrees to challenge you not out of malice, but out of faith in your strength. It trusts that you will remember who you are, even through the fire. And when you do remember, when the veil lifts and you see the deeper architecture of your relationships, everything changes. Anger softens. Forgiveness becomes possible. Not because you condone the pain, but because you understand its place in the greater design. You are not alone in this journey. Your soul companions walk beside you, lifetime after lifetime, helping you awaken. Some walk with you briefly, others stay for years, but all of them, in one way or another, mirror something you are ready to see. So ask yourself, who in your life has challenged you the most? Who has loved you most purely? What might your soul have agreed to learn through them? And most importantly, what contract have you made with yourself? To rise, to evolve, to remember. You are not broken, you are breaking open. From the moment we take our first breath, the illusion begins, the veil descends. We are taught to see ourselves as separate, from others, from the world, even from the divine. We are given names, roles, histories, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, we forget the vastness from which we came. We begin to believe that we are only this body, this mind, this fleeting story. But the soul remembers. Under hypnosis, as Weiss guided his patients into the spaces between lifetimes, something remarkable occurred. The identity dissolved, not in fear, but in peace. The ego melted away, and what remained was presence, limitless awareness, a radiant silence that held everything and needed nothing. In that place, they did not miss their past names, their possessions, their ambitions. They remembered only love, connection, unity. This is what we are beneath the illusion, not isolated beings, but expressions of a single, living consciousness. Each of us a wave in the same ocean, appearing briefly as distinct, only to return once more to the infinite. This illusion of separation is the root of so much suffering. When we believe ourselves to be alone, we defend, we compete, we fear. We forget that the person across from us carries the same divine spark. We forget that every act of kindness, every gesture of grace is ultimately a reunion with ourselves. Yet the illusion is not a mistake, it is part of the design. In the forgetting there is purpose, for only through the illusion can we experience true choice, true compassion, true rediscovery. Like a divine game of hide and seek, the soul veils itself so it can delight in the moment of remembrance. You are not here to escape the illusion, you are here to awaken within it, to walk through this dream with eyes open, to see the sacred in the ordinary, to feel the presence of the eternal in the most fleeting moment. Even now you are awakening. Each insight, each inner shift, is a crack in the illusion, a letting go, a returning. Think of those moments when time stood still, when a sunset moved you to tears, when a quiet voice within told you something deeper, when the presence of someone made you feel whole without a word. These are the soul's whispers breaking through the noise, evidence that the veil is thinning, that the old self is no longer the only truth. Weiss taught that healing is not just about remembering past lives, it is about remembering our essence, that we are not our trauma, not our fear, not our history. We are the witness, the light behind the story. And in that light, nothing is missing. So what do we do with this truth? We live differently, we soften, we listen. We no longer rush to judge or to separate. We begin to recognize that everyone is carrying a story behind their eyes, a story shaped by forgotten plans, unseen wounds, sacred contracts. And suddenly, life becomes sacred again. Every interaction, a potential moment of healing. Every challenge, a doorway to expansion. You were never meant to remain asleep. You came here to wake up in the midst of the illusion, to remember your wholeness in a world that insists on your fragmentation. And as you remember, you become a lighthouse for others, not by preaching, not by proving, but simply by being. By embodying the quiet, undeniable truth that we are all connected, that we never left the source, we only believed we did. Separation is the dream. Unity is the awakening. There is a moment, often quiet, often unnoticed by the world, when something shifts within you. The thoughts you once clung to begin to dissolve. The fears that ruled you lose their weight. And in the stillness beneath it all, you feel it, a return. Not to a past, not to an identity, but to the truth that was always there, waiting. This moment, this precise instant of your life is not random. It is the culmination of countless inner movements, choices, synchronicities. Before you entered this lifetime, your soul placed a marker here, not as an endpoint, but as an opening, a doorway, and now you stand before it. Weiss taught that we are not only souls that come to learn, we are also guides for ourselves. In the space between lives, we leave signs, echoes, luminous impressions in the timeline of our future incarnations, not to control the outcome, but to remind ourselves of who we are when we begin to forget. That strange dream you had, that déjà vu, that sudden pull toward a book, a teaching, a person, these are not accidents. They are the voice of your soul, reaching through the fog of forgetfulness, saying, now it's time. Time to wake up from the slumber of separation. Time to reclaim what was never lost, only hidden. This awakening is not always loud. Often it is tender. It arrives not with lightning, but with breath, a softness, a realization that you no longer need to seek outside what has always lived within. That you are already what you have been searching for. You begin to see life differently, not as a series of problems to be solved, but as layers of meaning to be revealed. You notice how certain people cross your path at the exact moment you are ready to evolve. How your greatest breakdowns were also your breakthroughs. How every detour was in truth part of the path. This is the design. Not one of rigid fate, but of luminous intention. You chose this life, not to suffer, but to remember your power, not to conform, but to awaken. And now, that awakening is unfolding, not because someone told you to, but because your soul is stirring. Weiss often reminded his patients that fear dissolves in the presence of memory. That when we reconnect with the truth of who we are, eternal, luminous, interconnected, we no longer fear death, loss, or even failure. We begin to live from the inside out, from essence, not appearance, from soul, not survival. So what now? You don't need to become someone new. You don't need to fix yourself. You need only to continue remembering, listening, trusting that the same wisdom that brought you to this exact moment will continue to guide you. You are not walking blindly, you are walking home. And as you walk, your presence becomes a light. You heal not by effort, but by resonance. Others begin to feel something in your silence, your gaze, your being. You become a reminder, for them and for yourself, that the soul is always present, even in the noise of the world. There is no final destination. Awakening is not a conclusion. It is a rhythm, a deepening, an eternal unfolding. But this chapter, right now, is sacred. You planned it, you arrived, you remembered. If these words touched your soul, subscribe to the channel and click on the video that just appeared on your screen. It was chosen especially for you. I know you'll love it.